time now for The World This Week. For the next 45 minutes, my panel of journalists and I will be dissecting and analysing the main news stories of the past 7 days. Let me introduce you to them now. They are Paul Taylor. He's a European affairs specialist at the news agency Reuters. Here with us as well is Craig Kopitis. He's a senior writer at Bloomberg News. Christopher Dickey is Newsweek magazine's Paris bureau chief and also its Middle East editor for the Daily Beast. He works for them as well. And Dave Clark is the Paris deputy bureau chief at the news agency AFP. Good evening to you all and thanks for being with us. Now, first up, the Eurozone debt crisis rumbled on this week. I've said that so many times. Germany called Britain selfish for opposing a tax on financial transactions. EU officials got in something of a pickle over those hated ratings agencies. Bond markets signalled that France is in deeper trouble than we might have thought. And two unelected technocrats rose to power. And they're now charged with sorting out the financial chaos left to them by their predecessors. Let's start with you, Craig. We are friends, says David Cameron after he met with Angela Merkel today. It doesn't look quite that way, though, does it?
No, it doesn't look that way at all. This spat, which started between Great Britain and the Eurozone, started at the very beginning of the EU, is going to continue for a long time to come. It's based on the fact that the British just don't want to get rid of the pound, and the Eurozone would love to see them get rid of it and take on the euro, which is the dead currency of the moment. What you're seeing here right now within the entire Eurozone, including the pounded Brits, is reminds me of the old Henry Miller line. Confusion is a word we have invented for an order which is not understood. And I find it hard-pressed to see anyone within the Eurozone, be they politician or government financier, who see anything here but confusion, and I still do not believe that they have any way out of this mess yet.
Paul Taylor, the British argument goes that why should we pay a financial transaction tax when our financial centre is the most vibrant and the biggest in Europe? We'd be hit the hardest, and it seems like we're being asked to pay for your mistakes.
Why should we be taxed when we can go on being free riders, you know? We're not in the euro, but we're its biggest financial centre, but we don't pay any tax on all the euro transactions that happen. And we want a strong and stable Eurozone, but of course we don't want them to, take on financial regulation in our place, and we don't want them to be actually moving ahead in closer integration in a way that we regard as threatening to our interests. So, Britain is the sort of rather like one of those London semi-detached houses. They think of themselves as living in a very desirable property. Everybody else thinks it looks just like the place next door.
And now you've been in Germany all this week. You were telling me there has been some concern in Europe that Germany is taking too much of a leading role in trying to resolve this crisis, and that decisions are being made in Berlin rather than Brussels.
Well, in some ways we've gone back 20 years. I mean, the euro was created partly because of the overmighty Deutschmark and the fact that the other countries of Europe wanted to regain some share of monetary sovereignty, and the Germans agreed to do that as sort of the price for German unification, but also because it was in the logic of having a single European market with the same rules applying to businesses around the continent. And I think that logic remains, even though it's been more difficult to make it work without a federal government and without a federal budget and so on. But I do think that the Germans, everybody's looking to the Germans to save Europe, to get Europe out of this mess. And the Germans, not surprisingly, are saying, well, if you want to get out of this mess, you're going to have to adopt the same sorts of fiscal disciplines and the same sort of reforms of your economy that we've been doing for the last decade. And that's where we stand tonight. The Germans, I think, don't want the euro to go down and will ultimately allow it to be rescued, although quite how remains to be seen. But they will exact a price for it, and the price will be that everybody will be a bit more German.
Dave Clark, is German medicine right for all of the sick economies in Europe?
Well, one of the problems we'll find if we were to all turn German is Germany is strong because it exports a lot, and that's because we buy it. If we exported a lot, who would buy it? We can't have, by definition, 27 Germanys in Europe because Germany has got a trade surplus which allows it to service what are actually very high debts. They talk a lot about the Southerners in Europe letting them down with uncontrolled public deficits, but the German debt is very high, and they were among one of the first countries to break the 3% rule that was supposedly set in stone when this all got started. So now they're looking. And bizarrely, we have Cameron coming over to Europe today to more or less give Nicola Sarkozy's line, can you get a bit more money out of the European Central Bank? Can you stop printing euros? And we've got a British Prime Minister trying to teach the Eurozone how to save itself.
Right. Christopher Dickey, we've seen the Greek Prime Minister go, we've seen the Italian Prime Minister go. Both have been replaced with ex-European Union men. Are you worried about the so-called democratic deficit in the EU?
Only insofar as I think this ignores the basic problem, which is not a problem of numbers. Everybody knows what the numbers are. Everybody knows what the mathematical difficulties are. It's a huge political problem finding the will and the leadership to get people to accept what needs to be done in this environment. And part of the problem with the European Union from the beginning was that they thought they could fudge this. They thought, well, we'll just have a bunch of technocrats who will all be smarter than everybody else in Brussels, and we'll sort of slip things in, and we'll make a little adjustment here and a little adjustment there, and somehow it'll all work out with this united currency, and guess what? It didn't. So now the idea is, well, Berlusconi wouldn't or couldn't or won't do what needs to be done, so we'll replace him with somebody from Brussels, basically. And we'll replace Papandreou with somebody from Brussels, because they think and talk like us in Brussels. But ultimately, their ability to communicate with the Italians and the Greeks is what's going to count, and I don't see any indication that they can.
It's a bubble. You had the most recent one was the housing bubble in the United States, which led to the bank meltdowns. I see the European Union as a bubble. In fact, when the euro was proposed and became the currency of Europe, there were many wise men and women who were saying that this was going to be a bubble, because you cannot have an economic policy and a currency without representation, and there isn't any. There is no, no matter how you want to cut it, there's no political grassroots voting support for the euro. These laws regarding all these deals are made in Brussels. The European Parliament is a sham in many, many respects. The French Parliament obviously is more important, or if you're in the UK, the Parliament there. Just look what happened in Greece, all the arguments going on there over the past couple of weeks, and bringing in, their technocrat Papademos. It's when the bubble pops.
I think it's the other way around. I'm sorry, I want to disagree with Craig. I think the problem is they launched a single currency, but they didn't go with the logic of it. That's to say,
right. I agree.
Right after the single currency was launched, national finance ministries said, God, we've given away all this power. We're not going to give it away anymore. We're not going to let them come and look in our books and see what we're really up to. We're not going to let them coordinate our budget policies and so on. So there was a way forward which wasn't taken.
No, I don't think there was a way forward because Europe is not the United States of America. Europe is not a federation of states like the United States. There's no voting blocks here, and to me that was always the big hole in this idea of a united Europe.
But 200 years ago, the American colonies were very different places from each other.
Absolutely. Maybe this is Europe's Alexander Hamilton moment.
Well, perhaps
he was a great technocrat.
Yeah, which technocrat?
He was, and he was the man.
And you know what he said? The people, sir, is a great beast. That's what he said.
And that's why you named the magazine The Beast.
What about, Christopher, what about the idea of this two-tier Europe then? You've got the Eurozone countries being led by France and Germany saying we want stronger political union, we have to have stronger political union to deal with the financial crisis, and then peripheral countries having less of a role. Do you think that's the way forward?
It's already the way things are. I mean, you've already got a Eurozone and a non-Eurozone. And you're going to have, it looks like, more and more of a north-south divide, and probably to some extent an east-west divide. But from the beginning, the French wanted all these Mediterranean countries in because they thought, they'll be answerable to us, we'll work with them. The Germans wanted all those East European countries. They're going to be our countries. And to some extent, that divide still exists. You're going to see a divide over, I think, political issues, economic issues. I think all of that's going to go on and on. And I'm not sure that I think we really are looking not just at the potential end of the euro currency, but a beginning of the end of the idea of European unification.
You think the euro could collapse?
I think it could. I hope not, because I think the implications are enormous.
I agree, Chris. I remember a conference I covered back in the day at the Journal when this was all starting, And I remember someone bringing up the idea, well, let's take a country like Finland, if they join, what does Finland make? It makes Nokias, and it has trees for timber. And and someone said, well, what if no one buys Nokias? And what if the housing market falls apart? And what if they don't make newsprint anymore?
The asymmetric shock.
Yeah. And I remember at the time everyone was saying, oh, that will never happen. Well, guess what? It has happened. So you look at what is the core cash flow in the countries of the Eurozone. And thank God France does make some things. England does make some things. Germany makes more things than anyone else. But the joker in the deck so does Italy. The joker in the deck is going to be China. I think that if you really want to track what's going to happen over the next 6 months to a year, look at Chinese investments in Europe. And remember that all Chinese investments are coming from the Chinese Communist Party and their surrogates there. Look at what's going on in Greece right now, where they're trying to sell the ports, many of the railroads, the airports, to Chinese investors.
Not sure they want to contribute to the EFSF, though, are they?
No.
Right now?
No.
That doesn't look like such a good
No,
bet,
it does. But even Sarkozy, a few weeks ago, remember how he got spanked because he stood up and said he wanted to talk to the Chinese?
But when I was speaking to some fervent pro-Euro supporters earlier this week, and they were telling me, look, this is about solidarity. This is about, when Greece is doing badly, Germany will help. And when another country is doing badly, another country will help.
We need glue to be solid.
When do we think that Greek solidarity with Germany is going to be really helpful?
Well, they buy German products.
No. I mean, I think the Germans lie awake at night saying, boy, can we count on Greek solidarity?
The history of the last 50 or 60 years is that every time there's one of these crises, the Europeans eventually pull together, and that the crisis is surmounted by further integration. That looks much harder this time, but I don't think it yet looks impossible. And I think you may well get a more integrated Eurozone coming out of this. I think the Euro will survive. I'm not certain of it, but I think it will. And I think it will survive with more members rather than fewer, because I think Poland will want to join within the next 3-4 years. And
do you think Greece should stay in the Euro?
I think I'm not sure Greece is going to be able to stay in the Euro. I think, Greece, it looks like, Greece has got the weaker of the two technocrats, and it's got somebody who looks like he's going to be eaten alive by the sharks of Greek politics. He may be around just long enough to get one big check from off the next bailout program, and then when the money's in the bank, I think he'll be sent packing. And I think that Greece will run out of patience with doing the hard stuff, and the Europeans will no longer lift a finger to keep Greece in.
The math doesn't work in Greece either.
Right, but we laugh about the situation at the moment, but 60. You've got to keep smiling, absolutely. But the European Union has guaranteed peace in this part of the world for decades now. And that was behind European integration in the first
place. If the European
place.
Union breaks up, if the Euro breaks up, then you will see protectionism within Europe. You will see serious, interstate
social unrest and everything that goes with
it. I'm not saying that you'll see war again. I find that hard to imagine.
Before, it's an economic war.
It's like
Panzers aren't going to cross the Maginot Line again.
Right.
This.
Yeah, but I think it's important to remember how much the historical memory of World War II was key to building Europe, and that historical memory.
Is that still there, though, Chris?
I don't think
because those people
they're not
that
worried about
generation
39 to 45. They're worried about the hyperinflation of Weimar Republic. They're worried about pre-war problems coming back.
You see it. There's a clear nationalistic tone coming into the discourse everywhere, whether it's through the populists or through Mr. Kauder this week in Germany saying we're all going to be speaking German now economically. He meant rather than. Because of the Panzers. The fact is that François Mitterrand, a wise man, said in one of his last speeches to the European Parliament, nationalism is war.
Right.
And if nationalism really gains the upper hand again in Europe, then...
and we are seeing a return to nationalism, and we are seeing a return to far right.
To see that.
We are seeing a return to far right
going
politics.
on in Greece.
But if we save the euro, it'll be through greater integration of the Eurozone core.
Yeah.
And if we fail to save the euro, then the whole show's gone down.
Then
whatever happens, the ever closer union of 27 going to 35, everyone joining the euro, that's over for now. Probably for good.
No, because if that nucleus is stabilised, then others will again congregate around it. I think
any stability of the euro going forward in this chaos, is it? I mean, I'm asking, is it not based that on the requirement that countries such as France are going to have to give up a lot of their national rights and amend a lot of their national laws to create a real solid series of federal laws throughout, let's just call it for the sake of argument, a future United States
and they
of Europe?
say they're willing to do that.
I don't see the voters going for that.
That's a big question.
I didn't see
But
a
as
will.
I was saying to one of my guests earlier this week, when you look at all the summits that we've had, Eurozone summits over the past few months, who have you seen? Sarkozy and Merkel. They're the ones making the decisions. They're the ones leading it. So
I've been to a lot of summits in the past few years, G20s and G8 and all sorts of summits, and I've never seen a group of world leaders looking as diminished by the crisis as we did in Cannes. None of them seem to be up to the task.
The trouble is that if Europe does fall apart, then all of our countries are dwarves. And we are, we're toast.
With the Great China.
And even Germany is toast.
And we tend to think of the debt as being located in various countries, but the countries that can't repay their sovereign debts owe that money to banks in the other countries. So even the ones that think that this is a Greek problem or an Italian problem, a Spanish problem, increasingly a French problem, the banks are in London, the banks are in Paris.
And the banks are a big part of the solution to this. And the relationship between the private sector and the government is at an all-time low.
Right. Very quickly, Christopher.
Well, we have to come back to politics again and again, because there's no reason for Italy to be in the trouble that it's in. It has a big debt, but it doesn't have a big deficit. The run on Italy was a speculative run based on the incapacity of Berlusconi to govern.
And that leads us nicely on to our next topic, because we will be talking about the financial industry in just a moment. But we have to take a short break. When we come back, we'll have the international headlines and the second part of The World This Week. Don't go away.